Today we will reopen the book of history to the most decisive page of Antiquity and alter a single heartbeat. The date is June 10th, 323 BCE. In Babylon, the heat is a stifling blanket pressing down on the hanging gardens and seeping into the corridors of Nebuchadnezzar's palace. In the dim light of the royal bedchamber, the air is thick with incense and acrid sweat. Alexander, son of Philip, the conqueror of Asia, lies in his bed. He is 32 years old. For days, an insidious fever has ravaged him, followed by a chilling paralysis creeping from his legs up to the nape of his neck. Greek physicians and Chaldean magi whisper of malaria, but the affliction is far more pernicious. It is Guillain-Barré syndrome, a betrayal by his own body that traps him in a sarcophagus of flesh. He can neither move nor speak nor blink. His contemporaries believe him comatose, hovering at the gates of the Styx. Ancient sources will speak of a man presumed dead for 6 days. Yet within the darkness of his skull, Alexander's mind remains terrifyingly lucid. Around his sickbed, his generals, Perdiccas, Ptolemy, Seleucus, no longer weep. They whisper. They are already drawing invisible borders across his still warm empire. Imprisoned in his own body, Alexander listens to the dismemberment of his dream. A fury burning hotter than the fever takes hold of him. He refuses to be nothing more than an illustrious corpse thrown to the hyenas. In our reality, the paralysis reaches his lungs that very night, and the empire shatters into pieces. But not today. In our tale, the inflammation recedes. His survival instinct, that primal force which saved him at the Battle of the Granicus, breaches the dam of his nerves. Around the 11th hour of the night, a spasm jolts his hand. His labored breathing settles. Alexander opens his eyes. His gaze meets Ptolemy's. The whispering chokes to a halt. He asks for water. He sits up. History holds its breath. The axis of the world has just shifted. Alexander's recovery is not celebrated as a mere convalescence. It strikes Babylon like a political thunderbolt. The king's paranoia, entirely justified by the whispers he caught during his paralysis, dictates a ruthless reclaiming of power. There are no grand theatrical trials. Alexander operates with the clinical precision of a surgeon amputating a gangrenous limb. Those officers who showed a little too much eagerness to carve up the world mysteriously disappear, or are sent to secure the deadly frontiers of Bactria. To replace the old Macedonian guard, Alexander leans on a new administration. Eumenes of Cardia, previously viewed with condescension, is elevated to the rank of archigramate, the Grand Chancellor of the Empire. This man of the pen, rather than the spear, becomes the linchpin of a state undergoing a profound transformation. The empire of warriors gives way to an empire of laws, but an idle army is a powder keg. In the autumn of 323, Alexander, still gaunt but consumed by a feverish energy, launches the expedition he was planning before his fall, the conquest of Arabia. This is not about glory, but an absolute economic imperative. He wants to lock down the spice route. The campaign is a grueling ordeal. The Nephud desert cannot be carved through like an enemy phalanx. Thirst, dysentery, and harassment from Bedouin tribes decimate the ranks. To prevent mutiny, Alexander marches at the vanguard. When handed a helmet filled with muddy water, he pours it out onto the sand, refusing to drink if his men cannot. Through this communion of suffering, he forges his army back together. By 322, Yemen is subdued, and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is pacified. Gold, frankincense, and pearls flood into Babylon, cementing the loyalty of his troops with unimaginable wealth. With the East pacified, Alexander's heterochromic gaze turns inevitably toward the setting sun. As early as 323, Carthaginian ambassadors had come to Babylon, spies draped in purple, to size up the young god. Alexander understood that this merchant city, a true thalassocracy dominating the Western Mediterranean, would never tolerate Greek hegemony. In the shipyards of Phoenicia, an armada of 1,000 ships takes shape. The assault is launched in the spring of 320, but the war against Carthage has none of the lightning-fast brilliance of Issus. It is a meat grinder for both men and wealth. The Punic city, protected by its triple walls and defended by a vastly superior fleet, resists with the energy of despair. The siege drags on for 3 harrowing years. Alexander's Greek and Phoenician engineers develop naphtha and incendiary projectiles that turn the harbors into howling infernos. The sea tastes of ash. Alexander himself is wounded, an arrow piercing his shoulder. The empire bleeds. The treasure hoarded at Persepolis melts away to pay mercenaries and rebuild shattered siege towers. When Carthage finally falls in 317, broken by famine and the crumbling of its walls, there is no joyous triumph. It is a mutual amputation that ends in a graft. Learning from this ruinous siege, Alexander spares the city. He executes the Cephates and the tribunal of the 104, but integrates the Punic merchants and sailors directly into his own imperial machine. The Mediterranean becomes a closed lake. The butterfly effect has just struck. Stripped of its naval rivalry with Carthage, a small Italian republic is about to lose the very engine of its maritime expansion. If you're enjoying this alternate timeline, drop a like and subscribe. Thank you. Southern Italy is a powder keg. For decades, the coastal Greek cities like Taranto have been harassed by the fearsome Lucanian and Samnite tribes. Worse still, in 331 BCE, the conqueror's uncle, Alexander of Epirus, met his end there, betrayed and slaughtered. 14 years later, Lucanian incursions threatened to set the newly pacified West ablaze. It is the perfect casus belli. Under the guise of avenging this old dynastic wound and protecting Hellenism, Alexander lands on the Italian peninsula. Standing in his way is a power emerging from the chaos of the Samnite Wars: Rome. The Republic is fierce, disciplined, and its legions have just adopted a maniple formation of terrifying flexibility. The clash takes place near Capua. For the first time in his life, the Macedonian phalanx meets its tactical nemesis. The collision is incredibly violent. Where the Sarissa imposes a static wall, the Roman legionary, armed with his short gladius and large shield, slips beneath the pikes, engages in brutal close quarters, falls back, and makes way for the next line. Alexander's formation bleeds. Defeat brushes against the king. It is only through the terrifying deployment of Indian war elephants, hidden until the very last moment, and a desperate charge by the companion cavalry against the Roman flanks, that the Republic's line finally breaks. Victory is snatched from the jaws of a bloodbath, but Alexander is deeply shaken. He has just taken the measure of Roman virtus. These peasant soldiers refuse to bend where the Persian immortals had fled. Ever pragmatic, Alexander halts his army. He will not march on Rome. He summons the defeated consuls and offers them a lopsided but honorable pact. Rome will keep its institutions and its senate, but will become the empire's sword in the West. Absorbed into the vast Hellenistic network, the Roman aristocracy begins to speak Greek. Nascent Roman law merges with Alexandrian jurisprudence. Rome will not be the mistress of the world. She will be its most prestigious military prefecture. The era of conquests draws to a close. Alexander has crossed the threshold into his 40s. His body bears the scars of 100 battles, but his mind has ascended toward dizzying abstraction. Dividing his time between Alexandria and Babylon, he becomes the builder of a blended cosmopolitan civilization. His great political masterpiece is no longer the earth, it is homonoia, the union of hearts and minds. Archigrammate Eumenes orchestrates a sprawling bureaucracy where Persians, Greeks, Phoenicians, and Romans coexist. The language barrier is shattered by the imposition of an administrative Koine Greek. But Alexander goes further. In the libraries and philosophical gardens he founds, Greek Stoics debate with Zoroastrian magi and Indian ascetics. Out of this melting pot emerges a powerful, unifying, syncretic state religion, the solar cult of Zeus, Mithras, Helios. The emperor is no longer a vulgar living god. He is the cosmic guarantor of Asher, the universal order. To feed the monstrous metropolises born of this peace, technology takes a giant leap forward. Without endless wars, and with a slightly reduced reliance on the slavery of conquest, engineering picks up the slack. In Alexandria, the engineers of the fledgling Mausion do not merely theorize. They harness the power of pressurized steam and apply it to pumping mechanisms. Primitive steam-driven pumps appear on the banks of the Nile and the Euphrates, multiplying agricultural yields tenfold. It is the dawn of the world's rationalization. The year 285 BCE marks the end of an era. In his chambers in Babylon, a 70-year-old man watches the twilight. Alexander has grown old. His leonine hair has turned white, his skin is parchment thin, and the old thigh wound received long ago in Central Asia leaves him with a terrible limp. For a man who believed himself the equal of Achilles, surviving was a blessing. But aging is a deeply intimate tragedy. A hero dies young in a blaze of glory. An administrator slowly fades away amid paperwork. He stares at his wrinkled hands, dotted with age spots. These hands that killed Clitus, that sliced through the Gordian knot, now serve only to press the imperial seal onto tax edicts. Yet, within this poignant melancholy, he finds his greatest victory. He knows that his son, Alexander IV, possesses neither his fire nor his genius. Were he to leave him absolute power, the empire would collapse. Over the past decade, Alexander has methodically stripped the throne of its omnipotence, transferring it instead to the Synedrion, the Universal Council of Nations. Around him, in the antechamber, the representatives of Carthage, Pella, Memphis, Bactra, and Rome are waiting. When he closes his eyes for the final time, peacefully, there is no war of succession. The machinery is already in motion. The conqueror has stepped aside for the institution. He has just succeeded where every empire of antiquity will fail. From then on, history accelerates, freed from our familiar milestones. The Hellenistic federal structure absorbs the shocks of time. Science finally finds a stable institutional patronage. Around 270 BCE, Ctesibius, a humble barber's son from Alexandria turned fluid mechanics genius, lays the groundwork for pneumatics and advanced hydraulics, bankrolled by the endless funds of the Synedrion. Deprived of the Roman martyrology, the religious map of the world is unrecognizable. Judea, governed with tolerance as a semi-autonomous satrapy, does not rise up in suicidal rebellions. The Second Temple of Jerusalem remains the nerve center of Judaism, curbing the massive diaspora. Early Christianity, lacking the network of Roman military roads to flee persecution and the despair of enslaved masses to fuel its growth, never becomes an imperial religion. It remains a Judeo-Greek philosophical brotherhood, eventually fading into the intellectual worship of the sun god. The connection with the East is never severed. The Han dynasty in China and the Synedrion in Babylon establish permanent embassies. Paper crosses the Himalayas 3 centuries ahead of schedule. Around 400 CE, the overwhelming need to reproduce imperial decrees in Aramaic, Greek, and Latin for millions of citizens drives the engineers of Antioch to carve movable type from baked clay and later from bronze. This rudimentary, cumbersome printing press, kept as a strict monopoly of the imperial chancellery, saves ancient thought from oblivion. Europe will experience neither destructive barbarian invasions nor the Dark Ages. Germanic tribes are slowly assimilated through trade, silk, and wine. If we look at the world today, the disorientation is total, dizzying, and yet perfectly coherent. The millennia-old distinction between East and West is utterly meaningless. Our planet is nothing but a massive Eurasian continuum, Cities like Paris, Lutetia, or London, Londinium, are splendid provincial metropolises, boasting lush agoras and grandiose bathhouses, but they remain the distant, rustic periphery of the civilized world. The beating heart of humanity, of high finance and science, lies along the eternal axis connecting Alexandria, Babylon, and Persepolis. The languages we know, English, French, Spanish, never saw the light of day. European dialects are complex creoles where Celtic and Germanic roots have been drowned beneath the syntax and majestic vocabulary of Koine Greek. Homer's alphabet is the universal alphabet. Geopolitically, we do not live in a world fragmented by jealous, war-mongering nation-states, but within colossal regional federations, direct heirs to the ancient satrapies, united by seamless trade and secular peace. There was no Dark Ages, no Crusades, no Inquisition to burn thought to ash. The Americas were not discovered by armored conquistadors, but slowly integrated into the global trade network by Punic or Asian merchant fleets, in a steady osmotic process that spared the New World the shock of a brutal genocide. Today, an anonymous citizen might stroll through the bustling streets of Babylon, a megalopolis of 30 million souls. He looks up at a glass and steel tower crowned with Doric friezes. He does not pray to a personal god who died on a cross, but gives thanks to cosmic providence and the harmonious order of the universe. He knows that civilization is an unbroken chain stretching back over 2 millennia, forged by the absolute will of a man who, one stifling June night, refused to let the world shatter. On that day, Alexander did not just conquer the earth. By surviving, he conquered time.